Yes, I'm Wally Mitchell. The family have lived here in this area for a lot of years, quite some generations, and we dearly love it. We do get involved in other areas, other activities, and you see different ways of living and doing things, but we keep reverting back here. It's not just home, it's a way of life, and the people in it are so closely integrated in the support they give to one another that this tiny village where we live, nobody locks their houses. They have this total trust, and if strangers or people who might seem challenging or unusual come through, there's this sense of bonding protection from the whole area, and it's never spoken. Nobody mentions, but that's just the way they live. Yes, it's very dry. That's the story at the moment, but it's just a moderate-sized property for these areas, and we run merino wool-cutting sheep and polled Hereford cattle. Yeah, you get dealt a different hand now and again, and I don't know that there's any favouritism. We all take a flogging occasionally. Yes, I think that looking back at it, we're very fortunate to live in this Western Division. It's a different type of pastoral operation, and you inevitably occasionally go broke. Markets that you can't influence change, and weather here is such that we're prone to drought, and they can be very prolonged, and no matter how careful you are with stock and your resources and maybe build up some wealth to buy fodder, that can all come to an end on time. If a drought runs long enough, it shuts us all down. It's unavoidable, but we choose to live here because our families have made it a successful way of life in the broad term. It's a way of life that I wouldn't share, wouldn't swap, I wouldn't trade with anybody, and yet we know the costs of it. Being prepared is only part of it, but being able to wear a good flogging when you get it is the other half. Yeah. Your plans are locked on to things you must do, and you're controlled by strange things. You're controlled by water, particularly. Like today, it was all planned I'd have the day here with you, but I've had a fence break from a little storm of only a short patch of country that got wet and ran water through a fence and knocked it down, and then stock have gone through that into an area of some 40,000 acres where there's no water. So I have to get them back. The wind today is helping, and the stock that I'm after are coming into that wind as they do, and they're making back towards where they know I have water for them. Yeah, it's magic. You can't stop it in a big season, so you look after it. You don't give it a hard time. You then try to accumulate a bit more money to do further improvements. There's always something to be done. Your fencing and things like that. Like properties here have over hundreds of miles of fencing on each property, and yards and sheds and tanks and water and bores and things, and these all need maintaining and replacing, and It's only a matter of you living for the land, living to keep it in such a condition it can continue to keep us. And I say us as the family and the broader family, and a degree of stability. Wealth isn't the right word for it, because wealth can be eroded very rapidly, but it's got to have stability. Otherwise you couldn't live in this country.
It's a lovely lifestyle because you can please yourself, what you do. If you don't want to see anyone, you don't have to. You don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to. And a very different life. And you have none of those commitments that the city people have to catch, you know, their buses, their trains, their trams, but we don't have any of that, you know, and we've got the wide open spaces. My married life with Wally, I told him the other day only that he did 38 years in local government. So the children saw a picture of the wall, and that was their father, and and I said, you know, it must be nearly time that I started to do what I want to do. But the whole trouble is, I'm too old now to do what I probably wanted to do, and oh no, I guess it's not all give and take, but there's a lot of it, and it's not all yes dear, no dear, 3 bags full. Because if you didn't have your say, you'd be very much the underdog in the family. So have your say and make sure, you know, he knows you're there and you've got your opinion of things. Now I can see him coming.
I've been fortunate enough to have to travel into other countries. I was representing Australian local government into places like Canada and China and US and Britain, and those trips are brief, but they give you a snapshot of people and lifestyles. But there are no real comparisons, because the life is only your own, and other people can't fully share that or influence it much either. You don't choose your faith, and you don't choose to be alone. It's just circumstance. But you have a lot of time to think and to rethink and to dread the decisions you've made in peace. It's different. There's a lot of quiet time. A lot of the hours of the day you're on your own, and that's different to most ways of life, where people not only mix with others, but they depend on others. But here, the dependency is very much on your own, and you have to depend on yourself and your close family. What is involved in a simple trip to church? Instead of a walk down the street or whatever, it might be up before daylight to be prepared and leave things looked after on the place while you're away for a full day or even more, and then travelling 100 k's or more to get to church. Yeah, well, their faith is the thing that their parents have given them, and in many cases, it's in difficult times, it's the only thing that they can give them. And then they realise that they've planted a life that will develop and grow and be beneficial and gainful, because without faith here, often there's nothing else. There's nothing else. When your stock are dying around you and your bank man doesn't want to know you or does want to know you, things can be very, very hard. And often I believe in the faith of these families have kept them out here and given them a reason to continue what they're doing, and then to find, when you get rain or a change in markets or seasons, an achievement. You've survived. The achievement of surviving is difficult to count in dollars, but it stands up forever. It's there because your family have lived on in the area with the same values, and this is where their faith is a basic part of that. Whether it be Catholic or Presbyterian or whatever, their Christian faith is a very large part of their survival in the backcountry. Well, the fact of a priest being in the area is a tremendously important part, although you may not recognise day by day, but the instances that we depend on, the major illness, a person dying, the chance of getting to Mass and Communion, getting to the sacraments is an important part, but just the communication with a person of faith and the confidence in them and the lifestyle that they have encouraged in the area is a very valuable part of the whole community, because you may have a very devout person who lives at a high standard and another bloke who enjoys a few beers but also has very high honesty and good to deal with, and they're both of great value. And the fact that they can live in these communities and appreciate one another brings the fact of faith through even more strongly. And all of these families originally somewhere had deep faith or they wouldn't have survived out here. I was mayor at the time, I guess, and welcomed Mother Teresa off the aircraft with her little cohorts. And the most impressive thing about them when they arrived was that they had all of their possessions in an enamel bucket each, and that was it. And that told us quite simply that they were very genuine, a lifestyle that was totally away from the general trend, and luxuries and things didn't matter to them at all. They didn't need to communicate in the things that didn't matter to them. They didn't have fashion, they didn't have stories, they just had a job to do. They were excellent, and they were happy. They were incredibly happy ladies. Well, it was originally a Presbyterian church in Byrock. Now, churches get about a bit out here because that one, the railway line was being built to Bourke, and when that was completed, the big numbers of people living at Byrock would have dissipated. So it belonged to the Presbyterian folk, and they moved it here to Louth, where they must have believed they had a stronger calling. And it was used by all faiths, and I can remember when I was going to school here, the Salvation Army girls used to come and liven the cobwebs in it every now and again. And eventually, like a lot of the Presbyterian churches, it was being put up for sale. So Margie and I decided to buy it, and the rest of the Catholic community all contributed, so we all own the little church. And now I think our local Chamber of Commerce have taken it over or whatever. It's quite unique. It seems to me the only church that has rates on it at the moment, although they say it's water rates, but we'll work that out. Yeah, we'll work that out. We develop a respect for God because even if He forgets to rain, He can wipe us out. Or if He forgets some of the issues that are important to us, we suffer. But so we've got to realise that we're in His care, and we hope He cares.